All right, we are recording. All right, thank you everyone. Thank you for coming. Good afternoon, and welcome to the benefits of MSA. Welcome to the benefits of MSA webinar. This is the first of this year's webinar series hosted by the MSA Microscopy Society of America Student Council. I'm Aubrey Penn, this year's Student Council Secretary, and I must say it's been such a pleasure to serve in that role thus far. The webinar today is an opportunity for current members to learn how to make the most of their membership and to demonstrate to non-members how beneficial this association can be for your personal and professional life. And really just to show how special the community of MSA, how special that community is. So I'm excited to get started, but first we have some housekeeping items. First, be aware of your mute button. If you do have a question throughout, you can unmute yourself. I'll try to control it throughout, but if you do unmute yourself, please mute yourself back to minimize any background noise. If you do have any questions at any point, feel free to click that chat button down at the bottom of your window, and you can type those in there at any point. And there also is going to be just some general information that can be shared in that chat window as well. The last thing is take note that this webinar is being recorded so that we can post it to YouTube later and reach a broader audience. So just be aware of that. All right, so let's get started. We'll begin by introducing our panelists. So panelists, as you introduce yourself, include who you are, what your job is, and describe your involvement with MSA throughout your career. We will begin with Dr. Esther Bullitt.
Good afternoon. I'm Esther Bullitt from the Boston University School of Medicine, and I'm an associate professor here, and I study pathogenesis using electron microscopy tools. So both from, for example, traditional electron tomography and cryotomography on virus-infected cells and things secreted from those cells, as well as macromolecular assemblies of pathogenic structures, such as the thin helical filaments that are on the surface of bacteria that cause traveler's diarrhea. So let's see, I joined the Microscopy Society when I was a graduate student and have been a member ever since. And I must say that every job that I've gotten has begun as informal conversations during a microscopy meeting, not always the MSA meeting, but some other microscopy meetings that I've been to as well. So it's an amazing networking tool that has helped me throughout my entire career.
All right, thank you, Esther. Next up, we have Dr. Elaine Humphrey.
Hello, I'm Elaine Humphrey. You're the person I'm seeing on the screen. I don't see me when I'm talking, is that right?
I guess so, yeah. I see you.
Okay, so I'm Elaine Humphrey. I'm the lab manager at the Advanced Microscopy Facility at the University of Victoria. So we have bragging rights here because we do have one of the highest resolution microscopes in the world, but we're an open lab. So we're open to anybody coming through. So 1 minute I'm talking to somebody about heart or liver, lungs, sharks, red tide, pollen grains. And these days it's much more in the way of materials, especially thin films for solar panels and fuel cells and cell phones and things like that. So a lot of, yeah, anything can come through. We've even had fine arts come through with pigments. They wanted to know what they were made of. So we have X-ray analysis on our SEM. I joined the MSA, I think 2004, and I've been to every meeting since, and I have to say, it's been awesome. And then about 2007 or 8, I met Caroline Schooley, who was running the outreach program, and she needed somebody to help with that. So I started helping, and I've been there ever since. And it's been so much fun because people come by and they network and we find out how other people are doing things. But that happens all the way through the whole of the MSA thing. It's, for me, it's been total. I got into microwaves. I got into all kinds of things I would never have got into if I hadn't have gone to the MSA meeting.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Elaine. Next, we have Dr. Will Bowman.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. My name is Will. I'm currently an assistant professor at UC Irvine in California. I started here in April, and I've been in MSA as a student member since 2011 or 2012, I don't remember. And then as a graduate student, I was in the student council committee, or no, the student committee, which was the thing that started before the student council was a thing. So it was like a trial group of students to see if there was anybody interested in starting a student council. And then once the student council formally formed, the first sort of activity they did was organize a pre-meeting congress for students and early career professionals. So I was part of the first organizing group for that. And yeah, I think basically I can reiterate that most of the professional opportunities I've had are somehow related to microscopy and were fostered or initiated at either a microscopy society meeting or seeing microscopists at other conferences or just interacting with them in research settings, and like developing the network of microscopists and also the skills to like offer microscopy to the material science community. So the research that goes on in my lab is application of advanced TEM techniques to understanding and developing materials for energy storage and conversion applications. So it's fairly broad, like the audience, because energy materials can mean a lot of things. So being able to bring that capability of advanced TEM to that group of scientists has been sort of very enjoyable for me, and also very interesting to learn as an avenue to learn about material science in general.
All right, thank you, Will. We are maybe waiting on our fourth panelist. That would be Josh Silverstein. Hopefully he'll be able to get in here before we wrap up here. But if not, we'll go ahead and get started on some of these questions. Just a reminder for anyone that came in late to the webinar, we have the chat window. You can click that button down at the bottom of your window, type in any questions at any point throughout the webinar. Feel free to ask us anything and everything. Okay, so some of you kind of touched on this, but just to expand, maybe include a specific story or something. How has your membership with the MSA helped or influenced your career? Any one of the panelists can start here. Esther, if you want to begin.
Sure. So I have been to many microscopy meetings, and often starting with the Sunday evening reception, you just start talking about how your work's been going during the last year with people that you know, and bring in people that they know that you don't know yet, and begin new collaborations, and as Elaine said, I mean, learn about the existence of techniques that you didn't know might be applicable to the research that I've been doing. And so that's happened pretty often. And one of the things that I've been trying to enhance in the Microscopy Society is the relationship between the biological sciences and the material sciences, because a lot of the methods and a lot of the analytical skills, like the mathematics, are very similar, and the groups are learning to talk to each other, but the vocabulary is different. And so at the microscopy meeting, we try and bring those two groups together in ways that are new.
Oh, you were so right. Yes. And when you can actually talk to somebody who's actually doing the technique, I mean, you could read their paper, but there's things missing in the paper. But when you can talk to them face to face, and let's face it, when the meeting comes together, you get so many people who are experts in their field in one place, and you can go chase them down. And they are quite willing to talk about their their subject.
That's been something that was really special for me, is just how, you know, since we are still kind of a smaller community, all of these big names in the field are extremely approachable at this, you know, still kind of small conference. So yeah, that's certainly been one of my favorite things, is to talk to these people directly. Will, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, so, okay, membership influenced my career by definitely going to the meeting. I started as a first-year student going to the meeting and just like being overwhelmed by the amount of activities and like content that's presented there. So that was just helpful technically, but also getting involved with MSA Student Council. Like, I'd say the job that I ended up getting was one of many potential jobs that I could have like explored in detail. And I had connections by way of organizing the pre-meeting Congress for students. And so there's like a whole fundraising campaign that's associated with that. And just going through that process kind of put me in touch with a lot of people that I would have never spoken to just because of like my inability to meet so many people at the meetings. And so that was very informative. And now when I have to organize things, I kind of generally know how to do things and like organize conferences and symposia and things like that. So it's useful for my job now, but also just having a network in the microscopy community and like being able to ask people for technical help or like products, vendors, like things that I don't know exist. I can ask quickly and figure out who makes it, or if it doesn't exist yet, like how I can work around. So yeah, I mean, my experience has only been as a student and as a postdoc. I've been to the meeting once as like neither of those two things. So I think there's a lot of like opportunity in the society, not only to get involved if you're interested in like serving the community, but also just as an avenue to like share your work and learn what's the cutting edge of microscopy. I think this meeting and then the International Congress on Electron Microscopy are the two that I thought were the most like, I guess, trailblazing, to use a cliche term, but always the best in like newest research I see at those two conferences. So I'm planning on going every year. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Will. So for panelists who were student members, what experiences, if you have any specific stories that you could share, what experience did you have as a student that were uniquely possible through your involvement with MSA? And council members, if you want to add anything on here too, feel more than welcome.
Am I the only one that was a student?
Esther, Elaine, were you all students?
I was as well. It was a long time ago though. But I do know that all of the Microscopy Society council members go over the career bulletin board at the Microscopy Society meeting, and they sort of get a sense of who's looking for a job and plan interviews there. So because they know that the people will already be at the meeting, they can talk to them about whether it's a good fit for a job that they're posting. So that
is so right. Sorry. Yes, very often somebody will be saying, I'm looking for somebody, and then the next minute I'm talking to somebody who's got those skills and I can push them into that way. Yeah, in that direction. You're right. I didn't come in as a student. I came in as a lab manager from the very beginning, but I work with the students a lot. So I agree.
Do any other student members have anything to add?
Yes, I would like to say that I can only recommend getting involved and like just reaching out with questions, or like if you're interested in being a leader and like shaping the society. You can start that from the time you're a student. I think that most of the people that I encounter who are like not in charge, but are on council or have organizing roles, they're very open to new ideas and exploring like suggestions, if they're rational and like within reason, I guess. But I think I've noticed that it's much appreciated when students like do things and try to push the boundaries of what currently exists and what's possible. And I think this is a good place to do it. There's a good infrastructure established with like executive council and how the meetings are managed. And I think it's a good opportunity just to learn the inner workings of like a professional society. Even if you don't end up being an academic, you can gain a lot from understanding how large organizations operate, just by sort of peeking in briefly for like a year or not. Yeah, so that was very informative for me. I didn't necessarily think I was going to go into academia, but I ended up doing that, and it's been helpful for the network, but also a lot of people that I know are in industry doing microscopy, and I see them at the meeting also because everybody sort of meets there, shares ideas that they can share if they're in industry, for example. But yeah, I think just getting involved and staying engaged is like the main advice I have, especially for MSA, because it is small enough to kind of keep, it's tractable, like as an organization. I don't think all are, like very large physical science or biological science societies aren't necessarily conducive to like a small group of students organizing anything. So MSA is a good size for that.
So Will said something that I'd like to go back to, which is talking. So he was one of the people organizing the pre-meeting Congress and talking to vendors about getting sponsorships. And I know for a fact, and I remember even as being a student, that the vendors are so interested, because look where he is now. He started as a student and now he's buying things from all those vendors, and they know him and he knows them. And I think it makes a very big difference in terms of when you're, you know, they're very interested in you because they know that eventually you will be spending money. And also, I mean, you also have great new ideas as well, but you are a potential client to them. You know, our careers are sort of on the fading end, and your careers are on the rising end. And so they understand that it's in their best interest to really be engaged with you. And so you should take great advantage of that. And because the meeting is also the right size to be doing it.
Yeah, thank you, Esther. We also have with us today our Student Council past president, Cameron Verano, and I believe she had something she wanted to add as well.
I was just going to say, I think as like somebody who did a PhD in a small, like at a med school, and there wasn't a lot of other cryo-EM labs, going to the meeting and being part of the community was one of the few times each year that I was surrounded by experts in the field who could really provide good feedback on my training and on problem solving. And so I think the society is perfectly sized for those who are maybe not at giant microscopy schools to be able to have that community with beyond the bounds of their institution. I thought that Esther was getting ready to tip on it, so I didn't really want to jump in. But it is like, I think that's really valuable. And the microscopes that we use are so expensive. So it's not like every school is equipped with like a Hall of Fame hall of microscopes. But there are a few that are, and those who are at those institutions are certainly lucky and are surrounded by a lot of labs. And then those of us who came from smaller schools, it's great to be able to get that community and that feedback because we're all training still. So I think that's a huge benefit of MSA.
Thank you, Cameron. So fitting kind of into this, we're talking a lot about the M&M meeting, which that's really helpful, but that's one big week in the year. what are some things throughout the year that are readily available to students, either educational or local activities that, yeah, can be experienced throughout the year? For example, go ahead.
Oh, I can just mention that there, like, throughout the year, there are workshops on electron microscopy of various sorts. I know Arizona State has one, which is lecture lab for like a week. It's a week-long workshop. Lehigh has, I'm going to forget some important ones. UC Irvine is starting one this year, specifically on liquid cell, TEM, and STEM spectroscopy. So I think looking out for like workshops during the year and small symposia locally. There's also like there are like regional societies. So we have one in Southern California. There's one in Northern California. There's scattered all over the country. I think there's like almost 20 or 30 of them. So they hold annual meetings also. We used to go to them every year for Arizona Imaging and Microanalysis Society. So it would vary between the 3 universities in Arizona. But those are always a good sort of like miniature meeting where you could go and benefit in sort of the same way that you do by going to M&M. But yeah, I'd recommend going to those. I went to several of them, and it's always nice to reconnect with people in your community outside of like your normal sort of thought bubble.
Right, definitely. And Elaine, you are involved with educational outreach with MSA. Would you like to describe a bit of what's involved with that and ways that students can be involved?
Oh yeah, because one of the easiest ways of getting to an M&M conference is to volunteer, because then you get lots of benefits, and financially it's not as expensive. And the volunteer coordinator has a list of things she needs volunteers for, and one of them is the outreach booth. So we just help along on the way we work stations. So the students will learn how to connect and work a station, and we have fun. My whole thing is like, let's have fun. So that's the main way I get connected with the students, is through the volunteers that come and help out on the mega booth and particularly the outreach booth. But students can get involved in all kinds of things like that. And if they're interested in going to some of the sessions, the volunteer coordinator, they just have to write down what they want to go to, and they can be in it. And look, and it's not very arduous, the sort of work that they have to do, but they can be part of it. I think that's about it.
Great, thank you. And I would say a way to get involved in these things actively, I've included a link in our chat to our website, microscopy.org, where all the information about these things and how you can specifically take active steps forward to get involved, everything is there. There's a specific education tab that you can go to see all the different things that the MSA has its hands in. Elaine, you also, did somebody have something to add?
So it's Esther. So I was going to add that in case Josh doesn't come, he's been organizing at the last microscopy meeting and is planning of this one, doing outreach in the local community of where the meeting is being held. And so there are pre-meeting events that he's been involved in, so for undergrads and even high school students. So there's many opportunities there as well.
Yeah, and speaking on the pre-meeting events, I'm aware of the pre-meeting conference that's available for students specifically. What other, Esther, do you know, what other pre-meeting events are there that students can be involved in?
So this thing that Josh organizes where I believe that it's in advance of the meeting on the weekend, he goes, last year he went to a local college and they had a poster session, and the winner of the poster session got to come to the entire meeting, I think. And all the students all the people who had posters came to a special session where they put up their posters at the meeting for a day. So Josh Silverstein would be the person to contact about that. I know he's working on this M&M 2020, but I don't know what the actual plans are yet.
Well, I think because Portland has a number of tabletop SEMs and a number of people mentoring grade 11s and 12s, they knew they had a resource of students interested. And so they came to the conference and had a wonderful time. So they found out what it was like to come to a conference, but they were all grade 12s. So I think because it was such a success, Josh wants to do it again, and we're supporting him.
Yeah, that's really exciting. That's one thing that I've found about MSA that is really special, is just how focused on the students it is. And as students, a lot of us graduate students, one of our main assets, or maybe one of our only assets as grad students, is funding. So now I would like to talk about some of the specific funding opportunities that are possible through MSA.
Before you go ahead, I had one more education thing.
Oh, absolutely.
Which is on the website, there's a video library. So you can watch videos of all of the tutorials that occurred at the microscopy meeting starting in 2010 through 2018. So that's an educational thing that you can do all year round. View those. Okay, now I'm done.
Thank you. Esther, if you'd like to continue talking about different fun, no. Okay, so one of the big things that I know that the Executive Council of MSA really pushes every year is funding specific students with the abstract awards or paper awards to attend the meeting. That's one of the main funding opportunities that's provided by the MSA. And those come in different forms, but they are specifically to get students that have done awesome work to the Microscopy and Microanalysis Conference. Yeah, to be able to do these things and network and share our work with other scientists or microscopists from all over the place. We also have the other big one is the Undergraduate Fellowship. For any undergrads that may be watching this now, the deadline, I believe, to submit is December 1st, I think, if I can get it, yep, December 1st. That information can also be found at microscopy.org if you are an undergrad who is interested in doing some microscopy work and would like funding to do that work. So
let me just say that what Aubrey was talking about the student poster awards or student scholarship awards for going to the meeting. So that's for graduate students or undergraduates, but the undergraduate award is a research award. It's not, I mean, it can be used to come to the meeting, but it's money for doing science, which is different than the awards for coming to the meeting itself. And while we're talking about awards, can I plug one award which has been under advertised? It's an ultramicrotomy award. So if one is cutting sections with a diamond knife, this is an award that's given at the meeting based on the poster that is presented. And the prizes are amazing. You can get either a Swiss watch or you can get a trip for 2 to Switzerland, which is kind of an amazing award. So if you're doing ultramicrotomy, you should consider having something about your methods and doing that.
What constitutes ultramicrotomy as opposed to just conventional microtomy?
It's whether you're talking microns or nanometers. So if you're cutting things, you want 50 to 90 nanometer thin sections. That's ultramicrotomy.
Okay.
Microscopy, usually it's a millimeter, a micron, or up to 5-10 microns.
Okay. I'm making a note of that.
And right here, we have seen the perfect example of some of the benefits of MSA, is having people from all different fields of microscopy that, you know, some of these people are truly experts in the field, and you can ask simple questions like that, or even the big, deep questions.
In my lab, no questions ever considered stupid. Please ask.
Definitely ask.
30 minutes trying to figure something out, or ask the question and get an immediate answer. We work on the principle, if you haven't been in within 10 days, you've forgotten something minor. And if you haven't been in within 6 weeks, you've forgotten something major. So no questions ever considered stupid.
and as grad students, we have to remember we are still students, and you know, this is our opportunity to learn. All right, so to switch gears just a little bit, we have Eric Hoagland with us, who is helping organize our pre-meeting Congress that is designed for specifically for students and postdocs. And he's going to give a bit here about what that is.
I have to unmute. There we go. All right, so yeah, as you've heard, networking is a big part of going to these conferences, and it's important for your future. So one way you can do that is the PMC. So it's for students, postdocs, and early career professionals. So it's a good way. If it's your first time to the conference, it's really overwhelming. You can come ahead of time and you get to see a lot of neat talks. You go ahead and start talking to sponsors or industry contacts, national labs. And it's just a good way to connect with people. So that's typically held on Saturday before the conference. And we have a couple social events as well. One on Friday night before our meeting, and then one on Saturday night after the pre-meeting conference. And then you get to talk with people throughout the rest of the conference who you've already met. So definitely come. You can find all the information on the MSA website.
All right, thank you, Eric. And is there funding provided for the PMC?
There is. For one, you can apply for the meeting awards, and there's student awards for that. But then the PMC itself also does provide some travel aid. I can't give you a number on that because it changes based on how many people apply. But it's a pretty good bit. It more or less covers a hotel stay.
Right. Yeah, I can say as someone who attended the PMC last year for the first time, it really is an awesome opportunity to get involved with the students. And I found that people I met at the PMC later on in the conference, I found that I was never in a room where there wasn't somebody that I could talk to. So sometimes at these conferences, it can be intimidating if you're there alone or your group is elsewhere. And you don't feel like you have anybody to talk to or connect with. The PMC is really, really special for that, because it gives you that opportunity to, you know, get to know other students and interface directly with some professionals as well. Thank you, Eric.
I have a question.
Sure.
What's going to be the social activity this year? And what was it last year?
Well, there's the dinner boat cruise, right?
Okay. Again?
And yeah, so we're doing that again.
Nice.
It's out of one of the Milwaukee harbors around the lake there.
Right.
Yeah, so there'll be probably about 125 people. Food, yum yum, and most likely music again. It'll be about 2 hours, and then still working on the Friday night one. We haven't come up with that yet, but we hope to do something fun.
Okay.
Thank you for that question. And again, a reminder to anyone that has any questions throughout, feel free to drop them in the chat or speak up at any point. All right. Oh, we do have a live question. So we have someone who asked, I was wondering if someone can talk about FIGs, that is focused interest groups. and FIG meetings happening at M&M. What are some of the extra benefits of becoming part of a FIG, say, for example, aberration-corrected electron microscopy? Have any of our panelists been involved in a focus interest group and have anything to add?
You get lunch. But it brings together people with a lot of experience that you can ask questions of in one room over lunch. Yeah, so there's quite a few now.
Or like, for example, there is the aberration corrected electron microscopy, but this year one of the more popular ones was a bio-EM. Was it sample, Cameron, I'm pretty sure you went to that one. Was it sample preparation or specifically just about biological electron microscopy?
I didn't get to, I should have done, because I'm supposed to be part of several of them, but I didn't get to any this last meeting because there was so many other things going on. That's the big problem. That is one of the problems about MSA. There's always these consecutive meetings and you want to be at 3 of them. And you sometimes choose wrong because you'd rather have been at the other, but anyway. But no, most of the time you're going to go to one you like, no matter what.
Cameron, did you have something to add?
I mean, I think I've done the sample prep one, so that was really beneficial since in bio-EM, sample prep is our biggest hurdle perhaps these days. But I think in general, particularly if you're diving into a new area, I think the FIGs are nice, and I think other people can speak to this, but it gives you a nice context as to what's going on in the field, what resources are there for the field, who to reach out, and again, just networking. So, yeah.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for that.
M&M is one of those, is an easy crowd. If you've got the right questions to start with, you can talk to anybody. Like, for instance, are you working TM or SEM? And they are always keen to show off their own talents, often. So it's not difficult to get a conversation going.
All right, thank you. And thank you for that question. So a question I was actually posed directly by a friend was someone who had heard about the MSA, the Microscopy Society of America, but had also heard of the MAS, the Microanalysis Society. I was wondering if we had anyone in our panel that is a member of both and can maybe talk about the differences between the two and how we're connected. Okay, well, if nobody's involved in both, we do have the Microanalysis Society is one of our sister societies. They do focus on microanalysis techniques, where the MSA is a little more focused specifically on the microscopy. We work together, I guess, to put on the microscopy and microanalysis meeting every year. But yeah, that was just a question I had posed to me.
So, and the Microanalysis Society is a smaller society. So being able to join with the Microscopy Society and now do joint memberships has been very beneficial to that community. But they have a separate leadership with different organizations. You know, so they have for example, they have a president that is the president for 3 years, whereas in our system, you're president-elect for the first year, then you're president, and then you're past president. So the structures sort of match and don't, but it works out really nicely.
All right.
I always thought that having a 1-year president was too short a time. And I figured that somewhere along the line, somebody suggest that the MSA has at least a 2-year president. Because you just got into the job when you're giving it up again.
Well, essentially, though, now it's a 3-year job because I am currently president-elect, and then in January I'll become the president, and then I'll stay on council for another year as the past president. So I'm a member of executive council for 3 years. And that's essentially the way the student council is set up as well, right, Erica?
But you just get used to the job when you're not in the job anymore. And I think that we would benefit from having a 2-year president, because then the second year, you've got all that experience. Anyway, just I shouldn't have brought it up. Sorry.
No, it's certainly useful because, you know, like right now we have Cameron with us, who's our past president, and just in the short time I've been able to work with her, I've seen, you know, she was in it kind of from the very beginning, right? So she has all of this experience and all this wisdom and knowledge of just how to do things in an association that someone like me, who's just kind of new coming in, that knowledge that I just don't have. So it is quite beneficial to have that past president person there that has been involved along the way. And I think it really allows that person to make maybe a bigger change during their time, rather than, you know, there's the learning process is a little, you have more time to get past that learning curve to really be an effective council member.
Mm-hmm. That's true. But as Erica is probably currently experiencing, it's a pretty full-time job just on the student council. And we have a really productive and active society, like I think as we've been talking about. And so I think by the time you're kind of exhausted and hitting that 1-year mark, it's really great to have somebody fresh in and bringing the energy and having ideas that you never thought of. And so I think the beauty of the society is the fact that they keep like old crotchety people who are tired around to like provide like some insights, but like there's like new fresh faces to provide ideas. And that's, I think, why we see the society evolve to match the membership so well. That would be my vote.
Yeah, thank you, Cameron. Yeah. We have a submitted question. So from Cynthia, thank you, Cynthia. She asked, is MSA available to optical and fluorescent microscopists, or is it only for electron microscopists? And in short, the answer is no. But even on our MSA Student Council, we have non-electron microscopists. Yes.
So actually the answer is yes. Yeah.
Yes. Very simply, we take all forms of microscopy seriously here at the MSA.
and the keynote speakers are often from light microscopy. So we had the person that did Foldscape, the light microscope that can go onto your phone, was a plenary speaker one year, and Xiaowei Zhang, who did Storm, the light microscopy technique that does super resolution, she's been a plenary speaker. So yes, we highly encourage light microscopy, and in terms of vendors, there's a lot of available toys to look at if you come to the meeting and see what's available. So we highly encourage light microscopy people.
Definitely. And that's one of the more available tools. I think it was Cameron was talking about just how expensive these big electron microscopes can be, but you know, the more easily digestible and widely available forms of microscopy are in the optical realm. So yeah. Yeah,
some of the optical microscopes these days start at about $1 million to $2 million even. If you're thinking confocal or, yeah. And I have an SEM that's like 500,000, so yeah.
Numbers are certainly involved in research.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so I'd like to give one last opportunity for anybody in the audience that might have questions to ask those before we wrap up. It doesn't look like we have anyone typing though. So just as a kind of closing session here, I want to ask each of the panelists if you have any parting words of advice for the attendees or for potential microscopists or people that are thinking about joining MSA. What parting advice would each of you have?
So I think that this is a fantastic society, and as people have been talking about, it's a really nice size. It's where you can get to know people and be involved without it being totally overwhelming. And I would also like to say a couple of things about the paper submissions for the microscopy meeting of 2020, which are, as we talked about a little bit, there are awards that one can apply for. There's a change in the paper submission this year, whereas one can put in smaller papers. It doesn't have to be 2 pages, doesn't have to have figures anymore. But if you want to apply for one of these student or postdoc awards, then you must have the 2-page format because we need something to be able to judge. So when the submission site opens, just read carefully and be sure to look at what the awards possibilities are, especially because it gets your science, well, any poster that you create will get your science to a large group of national and international scientists that really care about what it is that you're doing in your field. And also, it never hurts your CV to have an award on it.
Definitely.
I couldn't have said any better. I agree completely. Coming to the meeting is a real step in the right direction if that's where if you want to go into electron microscopy. And electron microscopy is awesome and better than any drug you could possibly want to take.
I will second that. My favorite form of therapy is sitting down at the microscope in that dark cave by myself for hours at a time. Will, do you have anything to add?
I suppose I do. I guess I think joining MSA, I mean, it's going to sound very cliche, and I think Cameron said this exact same thing at the conference, was like probably the single most influential decision on my career. I'm not going to say the best, I'm going to say the most influential because I just started my career. But yeah, it's definitely opened up a lot of opportunities to meet new people and be involved and learn the craft with a different appreciation than just sort of learning how to use the tools. It's helped me understand the capabilities more, even if I don't use them or know them. And that helps inform what science I could be doing or ways I can push my particular field or my discipline of material science a little further. And I think as people that deal in technique, application and development, I benefit personally a lot by just knowing what is possible to get out of the microscope and what's possible to do to the microscope and how it can be sort of optimized or employed in a different way. And that I could have, I think, only gotten at M&M just because of, well, and maybe some other microscopy conferences, but there is such an emphasis in that meeting on really understanding and appreciating what these machines can actually do. And the outcome, the scientific outcomes, you can just look at the people who go to M&M and look at the research productivity of those groups. And I think it sort of speaks for itself, the value of the tools, and having a venue where you can go and just sort of nerd out with people who also love going in imaging or doing spectroscopy with microscopes is probably, I don't know if I have a more valuable scientific and professional experience than that to comment on. So I don't know, like I said, I'll go to the meeting, even if it's in Honolulu, so far away from me. I'll do that. I'll make that sacrifice for M&M.
That's fantastic.
So, and one more thing from what Will said, and just because he said that he didn't know he was going to be an academic scientist for his career. And so that's one of the things that can be explored at the microscopy meeting as well. And through the society in general is, you know, which direction will your career go?
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you for that, Esther. And if you don't mind, one more time, I'd like to just emphasize before we close out here, so we have all these opportunities. You know, you can attend M&M and all these things and not be an MSA member. But Esther, what are specifically some of the things that we have available to us as members that non-members don't necessarily have access to?
Let's see. So as a member, you get the society magazines, which are Microscopy Today and Microscopy and Microanalysis. You get a less expensive registration for the meeting, I think. Certainly as a postdoc member you do, and a student member too, I think. What else do you get as an actual member? I think you get access to the career jobs board and the ability to see what jobs are available, and you get to participate in this amazing society and be a part of it.
Yeah, just as an example, just this week, I got an email from MSA, as I am a member, a list of just job listings that are available to people looking for microscopists or other types of scientists. And yeah, because I am a member, you know, just having it delivered right to you, jobs and things that we can apply to. Okay, well, if there are no last things, we can go ahead and close out here. So I would like to thank the audience, of course, for your attendance and for some of the pre-submitted questions that I either got directly from the form or just in person. If you have any additional questions, I've included our social media handles in the chat, or you can email studentcouncil@microscopy.org directly for any questions at all about MSA membership or, you know, any of the ways that you could be part of our association. And additionally, this video will be available on YouTube. You can subscribe and catch up on all of the MSA information. And finally, a huge thank you to all of our panelists, Esther Bullitt, Elaine Humphrey, and Will Bowman. Thank you so much for participating and making this webinar possible.
Thanks for organizing it.
Thank you for organizing it.
And everyone have a lovely day.
Thanks, panel.